All right, so my name is James Gwertzman, and I just came back from spending 5 years in Shanghai, where I set up and it was an amazing experience. I learned so much in China for 5 years. And in fact, it was 5 years ago here at GDC that I first started telling my friends that I was thinking of moving to China to open this office for PopCap. And most people said, are you crazy? Why would you want to go to China? No Western game company, except for Blizzard, has ever been successful in the Chinese market. And it was exactly that challenge of trying to figure out how we could go over there and make this work that drew me to China. And I'm happy to say 5 years later, we've actually been very successful. The office is profitable. It's the fastest growing part of PopCap. We're generating a much larger percentage of PopCap's profits than you might think of in our size. It's been a huge success. And what I want to do today is share with you not just some of the lessons we learned about how to go into China and be successful in China, but in particular, focus on our Plants vs. Zombies game, which we have turned into one of the top games in China, one of the top microtransaction games in all of EA, a runaway success, despite being just a Chinese game. And so I'm going to start by actually talking about a lot of the bad advice Western companies get when they're thinking about China. So why do most companies go to China? Books like 1 billion customers really set the wrong expectations. The idea is you go to China, and there's 1 billion people there. You're going to make all this money. Go, 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 go. And I think it's the draw of these vast markets that brings most companies there. The problem is, if you're going to a market like China to make a lot of money, it sets you up to make some very bad decisions. It sets you up to make decisions like hiring too fast, or hiring the wrong people, or copying whatever made you successful in North America and try to copy that over to the Chinese market. And when things go wrong, as they inevitably will, if the board of directors was promised all these giant profits you're going to make, and guess what? You're not making those giant profits in the first year, they might just pull the plug. And that has happened. I mean, China is littered with the corpses of Western companies who've gone in there trying to build businesses and failed. So if making money is not the right reason to go to China, what is the right reason to go to China? And I would actually argue that the right reason to go to China is to see China as a giant sandbox of innovation. And this is counterintuitive because most people, when they think of China, they think about piracy or copycats or clones. They don't think of China as this incredible opportunity to innovate, but that's exactly what China is. And if you take, so these are the traditional weaknesses. When a bunch of American expats sit around at an American Chamber of Commerce event in Shanghai, these are the problems they talk about. They say, oh, China, it's such a hard market. There's piracy, and there's too many competitors here, and my staff doesn't understand the importance of setting long-term strategy, and we can't keep anyone. I mean, here's all these problems, whole lot. Also happens to be an incredibly efficient way of distributing your IP very widely and building a huge audience. And having hundreds of competitors eager to copy you turns out to be a great opportunity to test out new ideas. You can see 100 different business models using your IP, figure out which one of those business models actually works, and then copy them and make that your business model. You can where the staff doesn't want to set long-term strategy. Well, maybe that makes sense in a market that's changing so quickly. Maybe it's actually better to be more nimble and iterate more quickly and just see what works. Opportunity to upgrade your staff quality more quickly because you are able to move people in and out more easily than you might in a more stable market. And top-down management style, so-called autocratic management style, allows you to have very quick decision-making and align very quickly on key directions. And even low quality, which people love to complain about, even low quality really turns into an ability to launch a minimum viable product much more quickly and see what works. And so there's a lot of strengths in China that make it an ideal opportunity, an ideal market to try out new ideas. And I'm going to give you a real-world example from PopCap. We launched Plants vs. Zombies on the PC, and it rapidly became one of the top pirated PC download games in China. Counterfeit Plants vs. Zombies merchandise popping up on Taobao. Taobao is sort of like the eBay equivalent in China. And when the number of counterfeit PVZ items passed 50,000, we said to ourselves, maybe this is the market telling us something. Maybe this is the market giving us some ideas for business models we should go after ourselves. And so whereas PopCap, nowhere in the world had PopCap ever entered the merchandise business, we said, maybe we should get into merchandising. And so that's exactly what we did. We launched a clothing line. We started launching plush toys. We did books. And lo and behold, merchandise is now 30% of our profits in China and one of the fastest growing parts of the business there. So merchandising became not only a great business for us in China, but we've now copied this model back to North America, and merchandising is now a big market for us in North America as well. And we would never be doing this here if we hadn't started in China. Another example is books and animation. We had partners coming to us saying, please let us do some comics and books based on Plants vs. Zombies. And we had never considered expanding our IP beyond the game anywhere in the world. We said, OK. We ended up launching some books and comic books. Well, lo and behold, we've now sold almost more than 8 million copies of books in China, that's a big, even by China standards, that's a really big number. We actually had several of the top-selling books last year coming from PopCap. And that's, again, it's, this Western company? So it's an opportunity to try things in China that we would never have tried sort of back home. Now, to give you a counterexample, let me tell you a story. We were getting dismayed after we made this big push in the merchandise that on the streets of Shanghai, this one Chinese company had cornered the market on counterfeit Plants vs. Zombies plush toys. Everywhere we went, we saw plush toys from this one company. And it was so fussing because we would go down there, we would send our lawyers down there, we'd go and talk to these guys and say, please, we love what you're doing, just pay us a little bit of a licensing fee and we're all good. And they said, no, we're not going to pay you, we don't have to pay you. So we finally said, all right, we're going to do what the Western company would do. We said, we're going to send in the lawyers. So we sent in the lawyers, and the lawyers brought in the police, and lo and behold, we had a successful raid on this Guangzhou factory. We confiscated 400,000 PVZ plush toys. It was a big deal. We're all patting ourselves in the back. Good job, good job. The Western law and order model works. Well, guess what happened? All of these counterfeit plush toys dried up in the supply chain. All these stores in Shanghai stopped selling PVZ toys. And our partners started telling us, we don't think PVZ is a hot brand anymore because we don't see your toys on the streets in Shanghai. So we don't want to license your game anymore because you're no longer in the streets, so clearly you're not hot anymore. So our own attempt to do the right thing backfired by making us seem a lot less cool than we really were, and we had to actually fight pretty hard to get back to where we were. So that's an example of applying where the Western thinking actually backfires sometimes in China. So now I want to talk about our Plants vs. Zombies Great Wall Edition. And this is one of the big successes, in fact, the biggest success we've had so far in China. And I'm going to start by playing. I could translate, but all this is saying is, a long time ago, there were plants. And zombies. Battling. All right, so that's Plants vs. Zombies Great Wall Edition, only available in QQ is what that says. And this is a quick revenue graph showing you the revenue from this game over the past year and a half. And I'm afraid I'm not showing the y-axis, so there's no absolute numbers here. But I can tell you that this is now the #4 game in all of EA by microtransaction revenue. So it's a #4 free-to-play game in all of EA, and that's just in China, whereas the other games are actually on a global basis. And there's some neat things to see here. And the point I'm trying to make on this slide is a long, ongoing basis. And we've done a lot of things over the course of the past year and a half to get this game to be successful. The other thing to note is that holidays are just as important in China as everywhere else. You can see the huge spike of revenue during the Chinese New Year when everyone stays home and, as far as we can tell, plays video games. So what I want to do now is go into a little bit more of the detail of exactly what we did along the way to make this game successful. So the first thing we did is we said, how are we going to make Plants vs. Zombies actually make money for us in China? It's a huge success, very popular, not making any money. And we started by adding in-game transactions. We took a premium game, PvZ, and we turned it into a freemium game. And we added, for example, a paywall. So after level 1-6, you had to pay money to keep it 60 cents. We added a soft currency gold that you could earn by playing the game that would be used to unlock anything that was sort of reusable or level locks or minigame modes. And then we introduced a hard currency diamonds that you could use to buy these consumable items. And I'll get more into those in a second. Consumable items are things, by just a month ago, February 24th, these diamond items, these consumable items, were up to 81% of the total revenue in the game. So we've been continuously refining and refining and refining the game so these one-time use items became a bigger and bigger percentage of the game. What's also interesting, though, is that where those items are being used. They're being used in adventure mode, which is the original traditional story mode that we all know and love from PvZ. So the original game, designed to be played without items, we added items, and now a huge chunk of the revenue is from players using the items to get through that game. We made it a little bit harder, but not much harder, which is actually a really interesting shift on that. We also added direct carrier billing so that in the game it's very, very easy to spend money. Just 2 clicks is all it takes. We support all the major carriers in China. And then, of course, we added new content. And we started with adding the original Great Wall mode. The trailer is deceptive. The trailer looks really cool. All we had done was add a new mode of the game with a Great Wall background and some new zombies, reskin zombies. But that was enough to really generate this whole new wave of enthusiasm for PvZ. So then we went ahead and said, well, that was successful. Let's go for the mother lode. Let's go for Journey to the West. Journey to the West is like the canonical Chinese mythology. So we created this whole new Journey to the West theme with a whole bunch of really cool new zombies. Again, these zombies are just reskins. So, for example, the bobsled is now this cool bamboo sled. The Zamboni guy is now kind of a farmer. The balloon zombie is now in a traditional Chinese balloon. And we added these really cool maps, really cool backgrounds. So these are now backgrounds to the game, again, inspired by the Chinese mythology, Journey to the West mythology. And again, this became another giant wave of support for this game. I've got a trailer for this game as well. So the team had a lot of fun building these alternate versions. Even though we were not doing anything revolutionary in the gameplay, it was really fun to mine the content and to play around with the kind of the Android. So the original game was iOS. And in fact, in North America, Android was a very low priority for us. But in China, Android is the game in town. In fact, last year, we were talking about $100 handsets. Now I think we're talking about like $65 handsets in China. I mean, Android is everywhere, and so we had to support Android. And the biggest thing we realized was we had to get our download size down. The original build was like 70 megabytes. But what we found out was every time we decreased the size of the build, the number of downloads would go up because a lot of users in China are in fixed data plans. And so when you've got a fixed data plan, you can't afford to download a large file. In fact, this shows you the some of the things we did to reduce the download size. We did things like merging images, getting rid of songs, getting rid of sound effects, cutting animation. I mean, we talk about quality. This is where the result of this basically was our quality got a lot worse. We got rid of local fonts. We got rid of a lot of high-resolution images. But it didn't matter. Every time we reduced the quality, we got the file smaller, the number of downloads went up even higher. And this actually shows you a little bit. Load it, if they don't have enough data plan, they're not going to play the game at all. And actually, we're now about to release an HD version specifically for players who do have Wi-Fi and high-end devices. But that's another one of the things that we never would have made these trade-offs in North America, but these are the right trade-offs to make in the Chinese market. We also added a lot more channels. So we launched originally on Tencent. But the thing in China, because there's no Google Play, it's an extremely fragmented Android marketplace. And so I think today we support 20 or so different Android channels, all that have their own local requirements, local interfaces, and so on to reach the market. Anti-hacking is a big deal. Any game that is successful in China is going to get a ton of hackers, and that can very quickly kill off in your monetization if hacking tools become developed. So we've done some very basic things like verification codes and some obfuscation. But this is an ongoing arms race. This is just the beginning. This is the kind of thing that you're never. It's a mark of success if you have to engage in investing engineering talent to reduce your hacking. We also did a lot of some A/B testing. The team has been very smart about the operations. So a good example was the question of the paywall. When we noticed that the majority of our revenue was coming from these in-game transactions, the logical thing to do would be, let's get rid of the paywall, and let's have the game be 100% free so more and more players can get in there. Items. But what we found out was a player who is never going to the player who's not going to buy the paywall is not going to buy in-game items either. And so it turns out, actually, by getting rid of the paywall, we dramatically reduced the overall revenue per install. And so we decided actually to keep the paywall. And in fact, we've actually gone on and done other A/B tests now where we decided, in fact, to not only keep the paywall, but to actually move it earlier. That by moving the paywall to level 1-3 right after the tutorial, revenue went up actually another 30% beyond that. So some very counterintuitive tests. We also found out, though, that App of the Week promotion with Apple, and we found that, of course, giving the game away for free, we still had all of this great in-game transaction revenue. Turns out iOS players in China really don't want the in-game transaction revenue. They were happier buying it premium and having a full unlocked version. And so what we've actually done is now made it, we actually went from being number 13 top grossing to number 35 by making the game entirely free. So we've actually gone back to premium pricing on iOS, even though we're keeping free to play on Android. So just showing that what works in one platform doesn't automatically work for a different platform. So in terms of what's next, the team in China has a huge number of plans for how they're going to continue refining and updating this game. Some really cool stuff the team is planning on doing. And personally, I've just moved back to Seattle. I'm working on a new project for PopCap. But I really, I've already seen a lot of the lessons that we've learned in China be used back in PopCap around the rest of the world. So we're doing things in America now differently based on what we've learned with our experience in China. And so I guess the last picture, this is a quick picture from my farewell party leaving Shanghai. It really was one of the high points of my career so far. I had a phenomenal time working there in China. I encourage anyone here who either has a chance to or is thinking of opening up an office in China or doing business in China. It really is a phenomenal opportunity to learn a lot and to really grow. So with that, I think I brought the whole thing in just in time. We have time for like 2 questions. So any questions, please come to the microphones.
the first one is, how did you decide the pricing strategy? So because the pricing level is different from here to in China. So how do you decide? And the second one, what was the ratio, the revenue ratio between the iOS version and the Android version? Thank you.
Sure. So the first question, how did we choose our pricing strategy? Our partners. So for example, Tencent was very helpful in helping us try out some initial price points. And then once we actually launched our price points, we did a lot of testing. We actually did do some alternate testing scenarios to see ultimately where we can maximize our revenues. So it was a combination of advice from partner, our own team's experience and understanding of the local market, and then some testing. And for the second question, the ratio of iOS to Android, now that we're live, now that the Android version is fully deployed and fully rolled out, I think it's like 10-to-1 Android versus iOS. So we're making at least 10x the revenue on Android that we're making on iOS. OK. Other questions? Yeah, please.
Sorry, so you recently did the free app of the week in North America as well. And I noticed that you guys added the merchandise button in the game in North America as well. How was that conversion compared to the China conversion?
And I believe that merchandise button just brought you to the website, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and then you could buy.
Yeah, so that was actually different. So we have a totally different binary in China versus North America. So that was unrelated to.
In the pictures, you have a very big team that you created in China. I mean, is this like the minimal requirement to go in there? I mean, how big is the change? Because you sometimes see the option of partnering with a local Chinese partner, or you have to really be there to make it work.
Yeah, so this is the team after 2 years. Sorry, this is the team after 5 years. And after we've successfully built out a lot of different business lines and a lot of different products. I would advise anyone go in very small, go in patient, try out lots of different things, and don't start hiring and ramping up your team until you really have figured out what's going to work and what's not going to work for you. In our case, we actually went in too big early on. And in fact, we did, about a year ago, we did a pretty large round of layoffs. We actually reduced the staff by about 35% a year ago, which was painful, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. We went from focusing on a lot of different platforms to mobile exclusive. And when we were done, we were able to shed some parts of the team that hadn't quite been the right. The result of that was a much leaner, more focused, tighter, better aligned organization that now is fully running itself. And I guess the proudest thing for me is that I'm no longer, now that I'm out, the team is completely locally run, locally managed. In fact, the GM of China, Leo, sitting right here, it's an entirely local team now running without any white guys like me trying to tell anyone what to do. So I'm very proud of the way that the team has grown over time. OK, last question.
So on Android, what percentage of gross gaming revenue do you pay out to platforms? And the second is, you mentioned there are a lot of platforms on Android because of there's no Google Play. Do you see in the short term or midterm there's going to be one or two going to dominate the market? Thank you.
Okay, so two questions. First question is how much of our revenue do we pay out to partners? And in general, platform and partner and billing costs are much higher in China than you're going to see in North America. Billing alone can be as much as 30% of the gross revenue when you factor in all the different channeling costs, billing costs, and so on. So I would say on average, our total cost to partners is anywhere from 50% to 30 to 50% of our revenue. As far as the second question, which was, do I think the market's going to consolidate anytime soon behind a single marketplace? The answer is no. I think China will continue to be a very fragmented marketplace. I don't know that they're going to continue to be 20 different big markets, but at least 4 or 5. I mean, it's not going to consolidate anytime soon. Yeah, it's too big a market for that to happen. OK, well, that's it. I'm already over time. So thank you very much for coming. Hope that was useful. And thank you.